Those joining remotely are currently muted. Microphones will be enabled when it is your turn to speak. The public comment portion of this hearing is being recorded for preparation of a transcript. Responses to comments and any revisions to the PEIS will be addressed in the final PEIS. For those joining online, this slide is for you. To turn on closed captioning, select More on the toolbar, then Language and Speech, then turn on Live Captions. Captions are available in languages other than English. I will repeat that. Select More, then Language and Speech, then turn on Live Captions. You may also adjust your screen layout. Select View on the toolbar and choose your preferred layout, including full screen or focus on content. Again, to repeat, select View and choose your preferred layout. If you are joining by phone, the presentation is available on the DOE NEPA website at the Environmental Impact Statements page. That address is www.energy.gov/NEPA/NEPA-documents. Enter 0573 in the search bar. This is the agenda for tonight's hearing. For those joining by phone and anyone who may not easily see the screen, I will summarize it. The presentation portion of this hearing will last approximately 30 minutes. Pat Moss, NNSA's Los Alamos Field Office Deputy Site Manager, will provide opening remarks regarding Los Alamos National Laboratory's mission and the role of pit production in that mission. Jane Fortner from NNSA's Office of Plutonium Modernization in Washington, D.C., is the NNSA NEPA document manager for this PEIS. She will summarize the draft PEIS. Comments will begin after the presentation is complete. This hearing is scheduled to conclude at approximately 8 p.m. local time. Tonight's meeting is a public hearing. Its purpose is for NNSA to summarize the draft PEIS and hear your comments. There is no question and answer session. Let's see, in addition to Pat Moss and Jade Fortner, Kristen Doors, the NNSA NEPA Compliance Officer, is also here to hear your public comment. Once Ms. Fortner has concluded her presentation, I will explain how to submit oral and written comments during this hearing and through the end of the comment period. Mr. Moss.
Thank you, Laura. Hello, and thank you for joining us at this hearing on the draft pit production PEIS. As mentioned, I'm Pat Moss, and I serve as the Deputy Site Office Manager at the Los Alamos Field Office. I would like to add a special thanks to any tribal representatives and government officials who have joined us tonight. NEPA encourages the public's participation in federal decision-making to help public officials make better, more informed decisions on projects that have the potential to impact the environment, and we welcome your participation and your comments. The pit production mission is proposed as a multi-site solution to produce plutonium pits and modernize the nuclear stockpile. LANL plays an important role in this mission because it has been in various stages of implementation of pit production for over 30 years. In addition to supporting the National Pit Production Mission, LANL supports other NNSA programs such as nuclear weapons research and development, stockpile surveillance, computational analysis, components manufacturing, and non-nuclear above-ground experimentation. NNSA also works with DOE's Office of Environmental Management, which is responsible for management of legacy waste and remediation. So I am the federal official hosting this hearing, and Jay Fortner will present a summary of the information included in the PEIS. I want to thank you again for joining us at this hearing, and I encourage your participation and look forward to your comments. And I'd like to turn it over to our presenter, Jade?
Thanks, Matt. Hello and welcome to this hearing. My name is Jade Fortner and I am joined today by Kristen Thurs. Kristen and others at NNSA provided guidance during the NEPA process and independently evaluated the document and coordinated its review with other federal officials. This interaction included DOE's Office of Environmental Management as well as other NNSA offices across the complex. Your input and comments on this draft PEIS will be considered by NNSA and allow us to improve the description and analysis of alternatives, as well as their potential impacts in the final PEIS. On the next slide, I will explain what NEPA evaluations have previously addressed pit production and why NNSA is preparing this programmatic PEIS. From 1952 to 1989, plutonium pits for the nuclear weapons stockpile were manufactured at the Rocky Flats plant in Golden, Colorado. Since that production mission ended, DOE's NNSA has evaluated the pit production mission multiple times over the last 30 years. The reviews have included both programmatic and site-specific reviews and decisions for Los Alamos National Laboratory and the Savannah River site. As shown on this slide, site-specific reviews were prepared for pit production at Lannel in 1999, 2008, 2020, and also in the recently issued 2026 Lannel Site-Wide EIS, or SWICE. These reviews evaluated production of up to 80 pits per year at Los Alamos. A site-specific review of pit production at SRS was finalized in 2020. That EIS evaluated production of 50 to 125 pits per year at SRS. NNSA has conducted programmatic NEPA reviews that included pit production in 1996 and 2008. In 2019, NNSA prepared a supplement analysis on the 2008 PEIS, which evaluated the concurrent pit production at Lannel and SRS. In 2020, NNSA published an amended Programmatic Record of Decision, or ROD, on the supplemental PEIS that decided to produce 30 pits per year at Lannel and 50 pits per year at SRS. They also published site-specific RODs for Lannel and SRS. After the publication of the 2020 RODs, plaintiffs litigated NNSA's decisions. The result of this litigation was a settlement agreement signed in early 2025 that precipitated the preparation of this PEIS document. The settlement agreement includes several stipulations that are relevant to the PEIS currently under development. These include a scoping period that lasts for at least 45 days after the scoping meetings are completed. The scoping meetings were held online on May 27th and 28th of 2025. The scoping period ended on July 14th of 2025. The comment period on this draft PEIS started on April 17th and is required to be 90 days. This establishes July 16th as the last day to submit comments on the draft PEIS. This 90-day period is twice the statutory minimum for comment period durations. The agreement also identified the specific hearing locations as listed on this slide. NNSA is holding hearings in each of these 5 locations during the comment period. The agreement also stipulates that the final PEIS and ROD must be published within 2.5 years, which is July of 2027, and until then, there are certain activities that are not allowed at the Savannah River site. For instance, NNSA cannot introduce special nuclear material to the main process building of SRPPF, install classified equipment in SRPPF, or begin construction of the waste characterization lab. This graphic represents the current PEIS schedule milestones. We are currently in the 90-day review period for the draft PEIS. NNSA plans to publish the final PEIS and ROD in early 2027 ahead of the July deadline. The main purpose of an EIS is to evaluate the potential impacts of a proposed action and its alternatives. The proposed action in this PEIS is to produce plutonium pits at required quantities to meet national security requirements. These requirements can be found in 50 United States Code 2538A and currently state that NNSA should demonstrate the ability to produce 80 pits per year by 2030. The statute also specifically identifies SRPPF at SRS and Lanels PF4 as locations for production. The alternatives include a no-action alternative, which limits production to Lanel but allows for continued construction at the Savannah River site, multi-site production alternative, and a single-site production alternative. The single-site production alternative would evaluate potential future decisions to limit production to only Lanel or SRS, but not both. Consideration of pit production at sites other than Lanel or SRS is not a reasonable alternative because it would be contrary to the current statute and could not be achieved within the congressionally mandated schedule. The PEIS will present potential impacts for an analytical period of 50 years. Lanel is one of 3 national security laboratories with responsibility for assessing the safety, security, and reliability of the U.S. nuclear weapons stockpile. The U.S. government has been operating at this site since 1943. The laboratory employs over 16,000 people, has an annual budget of over $4 billion, and occupies about 40 square miles. This graphic is an aerial photo of a portion of TA-55. The large building in the center is PF4, where a majority of pit production operations take place. The multi-story building in the upper right corner is the radiological laboratory, utility, and office building, also called RULA, which supports pit production activities. NNSA recently published the 2026 Lanel SPICE. All of the actions included in the no-action alternative of the pit production PEIS related to Lanel were evaluated in the SPICE and included in the Lanel SPICE record of decision. Pit production is only a subset of the activities evaluated in the Lanel SPICE. Some examples of pit production-related activities that will be implemented at Lanel include the production of 30 pits per year with a surge capacity to 80, and construction of office buildings, security facilities, cafeterias, roads, parking, and additional transuranic waste staging areas. Construction of the Savannah River site was authorized in 1950 by President Truman. The site is an industrial complex responsible for supporting our nation's nuclear defense, preventing nuclear weapon proliferation, environmental stewardship and cleanup, waste management, and disposition of nuclear materials. Examples of NNSA's production missions at the Savannah River site include tritium operations and extraction, preparing for pit production, and surplus material disposition. SRS employs over 13,000 federal and contractor staff with an annual budget just under $4 billion. SRS is over 310 square miles and is mostly wooded. The graphic shown on the slide depicts the layout of the SRPPF complex in F area, one of the industrialized areas in the center of SRS. F area is located over 6 miles from the western site boundary of the Savannah River. NNSA published the SRS pit production EIS and the subsequent ROD in 2020. The ROD supports repurposing the mixed oxide fuel fabrication facility into SRPPF and the construction of several support facilities within the F area. As mentioned previously, the construction at SRS is ongoing and is evaluated as part of the no action alternative in the PEIS, although operations of facilities cannot begin until after a ROD on this PEIS in accordance with the settlement agreement. This slide identifies the environmental resource areas analyzed in the PEIS. These resources were also addressed in the 2026 Lanel Splice and the 2020 SRS Pit Production EIS. The current NEPA statute and DOE's NEPA implementing procedures include a page limit for EISs. The PEIS complies with this page limit. Chapter 4 of the PEIS includes separate sections for each resource impact for Lanel and SRS. It also includes a section that provides complex-wide impacts that could be additive for multi-site concurrent pit production. These impacts primarily focus on transportation and waste management. To define the no action alternative, NNSA has selected those actions that have been previously approved and included in previous records of decision. At Lanel, this includes the upgrading of PF4, additional offices, cafeterias, security facilities, and training centers, true waste staging areas, and the production of at least 30 pits per year with a surge capacity to 80 pits per year. The no action alternative at SRS includes construction of the facilities described in the 2020 EIS. NNSA cannot bring special nuclear material into SRPPF or construct specified support facilities until after a record of decision is published on this PEIS. Therefore, these activities are not included in the no action alternative. Under the multi-site alternative, NNSA would produce pits concurrently at Lanel and the Savannah River site. At Lanel, pit production is assumed to range from 10 to 80 pits per year, and at SRS, the PEIS evaluates production of 50 to 125 pits per year. At the maximum annual production rates analyzed, NNSA could produce a total of 205 pits per year from each site total. Analyzing a range of pit production capacities provides flexibility in the event pit production requirements change in the future. The PEIS analyzes a single site alternative in the event multi-site pit production is no longer needed or desired in the future. For example, funding constraints at NNSA may force NNSA to produce pits at a single site. A single site alternative at Lanel would be the same as the no action alternative. A single site alternative at SRS assumes the production of 50 to 125 pits per year only at SRS with minimal pit production at Lanel. With pit production only at SRS, NNSA would not produce pits for the stockpile at Lanel, but they would maintain the existing Lanel pit production capability in standby. In this mode, Lanel would produce a minimal number of pits, such as 10 per year, to maintain production competency. Plutonium research and development, surveillance, testing, and other plutonium missions would continue as they are independent of the pit production mission. Last year, NNSA established specialized teams to evaluate aspects of the pit production process at SRS and Lanel to identify potential enhancements that could improve the overall pit production mission. As an outcome of these reviews and other NNSA considerations, there are opportunities for enhancements that NNSA is considering for future implementation at one or both sites. Descriptions of these enhancements are provided in Section 2.7 of the PEIS. Each of the resource area impact sections in Chapter 4 include a discussion of how these enhancements could change the impacts of the proposed action, if at all. Some examples include increasing the plutonium inventory limit at Rulon to allow for some activities currently performed in the Chemistry and Metallurgy Research Building to instead be performed in TA 55. Using commercially available mobile waste compactors at landfill or SRS to size reduce tree waste before sending it to WIP, and using the glove boxes and facilities in SRS's K area that were initially planned for surplus plutonium disposition to supplement capabilities at SRS's SRPPF for preparing purified plutonium. These next two slides provide a broad overview of potential impacts and a comparison between sites. A tabular comparison of each alternative by site by resource area can be found in section 2.9 of volume 1 and in the summary document. The permanent land development dedicated to pit production at Linell and SRS is similar in that both sites require about 70 acres of facility and infrastructure. The air pollutant emissions would be similar for both sites and well below the de minimis standards. The potential radiological air emissions would be very small for both sites and would contribute much less than 1% of current radiological releases at Linell and SRS. From a workforce standpoint, construction activities at SRS would be higher in the short term than at Linell. However, both sites would potentially add over 2,000 operational workers. Radiological transportation of nuclear materials and waste would use the nation's highways. Even at the highest production rates, transportation impacts on crews and the public along transportation routes would be relatively small. For instance, incident-free transportation would add less than 1% of additional annual risk of a latent cancer fatality in the public population. The additional accident risk, taking into account the probability of a severe accident, would statistically represent about one fatality every 33,000 years. For comparison, there would be about 0.06 potential traffic fatalities per year from a non-radiological accident, or roughly one every 17 years. This slide presents the estimates for radiological waste volumes generated for the range of production capacities. Most low-level waste from Linell would be disposed of at the Nevada National Security Site. Most low-level waste from SRS would be disposed of on-site in SRS's E area. Adequate capacity exists at both locations. Most mixed waste would be disposed of at a licensed commercial disposal facility. Again, there is adequate capacity for this waste. True waste is disposed of only at the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant in New Mexico. WIP is permitted under the WIP Land Withdrawal Act with volumetric and radioactivity limits. DOE's Office of Environmental Management operates WIP and reports annually on the amount of true waste projected to be disposed of. For operations meeting the current pit production statute of 80 pits per year, the amount of true waste generated could be disposed of within the current volume limit. Ultimately, as pit production proceeds, whether at single or multiple production sites, NNSA and DOE's Office of Environmental Management would continue to monitor annual
comments from the podium, written comments submitted tonight using forms at the registration table, written comments submitted later by email to PITPEIS@nnsa.dov.gov or U.S. mail using the contact information on the slide and on the DOE NEPA website. Comments must be postmarked or submitted by midnight July 16 to be considered in preparation for the final PEIS. Late comments will be considered to the extent practical. All comments, oral and written, receive equal consideration. Please be advised that your entire comment, including any personally identifiable information, may become publicly available. If you would like NNSA to withhold your name or other identifying information, state that request at the beginning of your comment. Anonymous comments may also be submitted. Final item for those who attended the open house. Conversations during the open house were not recorded and are not part of the formal record. If you want those views considered, restate them tonight or submit them in writing. I will now explain the oral comment process. Those in the room that wish to provide oral comments must sign up at the registration table. Staff will provide me with the speaker list, and you can still sign up if you like. I will explain online participation in a moment. To allow time for as many speakers as possible, oral comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Comments are individual comments. Time may not be transferred or shared. 3 minutes is brief. Detailed comments should also be submitted in writing so the full record reflects your views. If time remains after all first round speakers have been heard, additional comments may be accepted. Time cards will be displayed during your remarks right here. The speakers, those who are making comments, will come right up here to this podium where there's a microphone and they can speak in, and they'll be able to see the time cards. Begin by stating and spelling your name and the name of any organization you officially represent. Your 3 minutes begins at that time. NNSA asks that comments address the analysis contained in the draft PEIS. Many attendees may hold strong views about pit production or nuclear weapons generally. This hearing exists to provide your comments to NNSA regarding the draft PEIS. Strong views and criticism of the project, the agencies, and the analysis are fully appropriate in this process. However, we cannot allow personal attacks, interruptions that prevent others from speaking, or other conduct that disrupts the meeting. I will manage the hearing to ensure everyone has the opportunity to comment in an orderly and respectful setting. For those joining on Teams, select and maintain your raised hand icon on the toolbar to indicate your wish to comment. When called, unmute your microphone using the toolbar icon on the participant panel. For those joining by phone, dial *5 to raise your hand. When called, dial *6 to unmute your line. It may take a moment for the meeting host to enable your microphone. Once unmuted, state and spell your name, then begin your comment. We are now beginning the formal comment session. Are there any questions about tonight's comment process, just the process? As a reminder, this portion of the hearing is being recorded for transcription. The federal official hosting tonight's hearing is Mr. Pat Moss. All right, so we are now going into the public comments, and I'm going to read out the first 5 names of those that signed up here in the room, so that you will know if you hear your name that you're queued up to speak shortly. We're going to start with Mr. Stephen Fox. Then we have Jay Coolhan. I'm not sure if I got that right. Coughlin? Coolhan sounds better. Sophia Stroud. Sophia Stroud, did I get that correct? Okay. Donna Depp-Willer. Donna Depp-Willer. Okay, thank you. And John Elwicks. Okay, so that's going to be the order for the first 5. So we'll start, and Mr. Fox, you may come up here to the podium. Thank you.
So, I'm a bit of laryngitis right now, but I sent this message, we've got extra copies of, to a bunch of international people this morning, and this may be more interesting than my comment itself.
Excuse me, Mr. Cox, we want to make sure we have your name. S-T-E-P-H-E-N F-O-X. Thank you.
So, there'll be copies of this on Greg Meller's table after this. But I want you to know it's important we went to the 24 ministers of Russia, President of Brazil, Pope Leo, UN Ambassador of Japan, President of Colombia, Member of Parliament of India, some foreign ministry officials from Turkey, the Prime Minister of Lebanon, who is interesting because his name is Nawaf Salam. That means peace. just Prime Minister of Peace. And he was the president of the International Court of Justice in those hearings about South Africa versus Israel. So he's very much involved in this, much closer to what could be an epicenter of a large war than we are here. Also with officials from Angola, South Africa, the King of Lesotho, President of Namibia, the King of Denmark, the King of Spain. Something about the King of Spain, you have to remember. The U.S. Air Force dropped a hydrogen bomb off of Spain, off the coast of Spain. They couldn't find it for weeks. And then there was a big uproar in Spain. And they finally found it, and it was still armed. It could have easily gone off. They dropped it from the airplane. So the King of Spain is quite interesting. He was the first head of state to recognize the United Nations on the faith. And I'm grateful for that. There have been some others too. I also went to the Prince of Liechtenstein, Andorra, the old Queen of the Netherlands, the present King of Sweden, Foreign Minister of Finland, UN ambassadors from Mauritania, Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt, Burkina Faso, Somalia, Panama, Romania, and Armenia. So I'd be glad to, how are we doing on time? Okay, so all this stuff on the DOA channel, right? Somewhere between alphabet soup and the dog and pony show. You know, the PEIS and the DOA, etc. And I want you to know that back in 1979, I dealt with one of these hearings about Austin. And when the DOA was trying to condemn the Web project, but they skipped the whole process of the Federal Land Policy Management Act, formally withdrawing it. They said, no, we don't have to do that. So I've been down there and identified this problem for the Texans, and they didn't like it at all. Thank you very much. My name is Stephen Fox. I'm founder of the United Nations Sanitary, and I have a YouTube channel called the United Nations Sanitary. Be sure to listen to the ninth speaker because he's from Hiroshima.
And Jay, please start by spelling your first and last name and the organization you represent. Thank you.
So I'm Jay Coughlin with Nuclear Watch New Mexico. We're one of the plaintiffs that forced NNSA to do this. My name's spelled Jaycoghlan. Now I'm going to summarize why pit reduction is not only not necessary but downright wrong. For starters, no future pit reduction is to maintain the safety and reliability of the existing stockpile. It's all for new designs that could prompt the U.S. to return to testing, which would just shred the non-proliferation regime. Further, an expert study in 2006 found that most pit types have lifetimes of at least 100 years. Those that don't have clear fixes to make them last that long, and there's already more than 15,000 existing pits. Pit production is NNSA's most expensive program ever. We're talking 30 billion plus over, the next decade. But yet, according to the Government Accountability Office, NNSA has failed for years to come up with credible cost estimates. The New Mexico Environment Department is demanding that the waste isolation pilot plant prioritize the disposal of old waste, not new bomb waste. And further, NMAD is requiring DOE to start looking for a new out-of-state dump. The bottom line is that there is no certain path for future disposal of bomb waste. This one really gets me. The Programmatic Environmental Impact Statement claims that NNSA programs are consistent with, that's the word they use, the 1970 Non-Proliferation Treaty. Now that's blatantly false. The treaty required nuclear weapons powers to enter into negotiations And after more than a half century, the US and the other weapons powers have never even begun to do that. And then my final point, given just 3 minutes, is that PIP production is going to actively block cleanup. And cleanup is what we need. The State Environment Department has ordered comprehensive cleanup of an old dump up there, which is near the PIP production facility. And because of that, NNSA is now claiming that Area C is associated with active facility operations, and therefore NNSA and the lab are going to defer, that's what they call it, cleanup, until PIP production is done, which in effect means never. So what we really need is protection of our groundwater through comprehensive cleanup. We don't need more nuclear weapons, which after all is simply overkill at this point in time. So what this programmatic environmental impact statement should really be pursuing is a viable alternative where the lab cleans up instead of threatening more contamination of our groundwater with plutonium PIP production.
My name is Sophia Stroud, S-O-P-H-I-A-S-T-R-O-U-D. I'm with Nuclear Watch New Mexico. My comments will overlap with Jay's a little bit. But we are one of the plaintiff organizations, as you heard, that successfully sued NNSA and DOE to get them to do this impact statement. The government illegally went ahead with expanding plutonium pit production, and we had to sue them to get them to follow the law. This behavior is typical, as DOE is a chronic National Environmental Policy Act offender, but they won't silence us that easily. They do not get to continue to harm our community and our environment without a fight and without our voices being heard. So thank you all for being here tonight. Expanded plutonium pit production is unnecessary. There are thousands of pits in storage at the Pantex plant in Texas, and they are not at risk of expiring. The ones that are at risk of expiring have proven fixes. The NNSA has not considered pit reuse. The NNSA has not produced cost estimates for expanded plutonium pit production at any point in this program, and now plans to produce 205 pits per year or more. That's 1 pit per weapon. 205 new nuclear weapons per year that are each many times more powerful than the bombs the US dropped on Japan. The total that the Los Alamos Laboratory is plans to spend in fiscal year 2027 is $7 billion. $6 billion of that is directly for nuclear weapons research and production. DOE's total spending in New Mexico across its 3 sites, the Llano and Sandia labs and the waste isolation pilot plant, exceeds the entire operating budget for the state of New Mexico. Last year, these totals were equal. This year, the New Mexico state budget increased to prioritize universal childcare, education, affordable housing, and infrastructure. The national labs budget increased to make new weapons of mass destruction. New plutonium pit production is not to maintain the safety and reliability of our current stockpile. It is for new design nuclear weapons. Our current stockpile already has enough nuclear weapons to decimate the entire human race. Yet we're spending trillions of dollars and building new bomb facilities that are planned to be operational until 2080 or longer, while producing machines of death and harming our community and our land. I personally can't quite really fathom these timelines or these costs. This is nuclear weapons forever. I want health care. I want my student loans gone. I want child care in the future. I want clean water and air forever. I want these things for mine and my friends and my families and my community's protection and safety and security. I do not want new nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons do not make us safer. Thank you.
Good evening. I am Donna Detweiler, D-O-N-N-A-D-E-T-W-E-I-L-E-R, a business owner in Albuquerque and a devotee of water. I am perplexed that given the scarcity of water in New Mexico, it is mentioned only once in the 37-page summary. Most of the full PEIS deals with effluent and not with source. S3.1 lists Llano water resources as site and adjacent surface water and groundwater under the Llano site, nearby off-site areas and extending northward into southern Colorado with focus on the Rio Grande. The full PEIS does not quantify those resources nor compare them with expected water use at Llano, which High Country News article reports at 1.4 million gallons of water per day for the coming decade. This is a major environmental impact that deserves more than a blind hope. Current pumping rates are sustainable for decades. What about doubling pumping rates as projected for the construction and larger workforce? If indeed Rio Grande flows are at record lows, 45 miles of river are already dry, and the Hispaniola Basin already sees well levels declining feet per year, then these facts need to weigh in. I contend they make Llano fatally unsuitable for the pit mission. Chromium has been found in some Ildefonso's water, snowpack continues collapsing, climate change is accelerating acidification. How will the lab, a junior water rank holder, have wet water to do the job? This water guzzler does not belong in New Mexico, although the PEIS admits that, quote, there are no reasonably available alternative drinking water sources if the aquifer becomes contaminated. It already is. I see no infrastructure nor feasibility study for water reuse. I therefore advocate for canceling pet production at Llano before irreparable loss and damage to our water are compounded. Thanks for your consideration. Shut the water down to Llano pet production.
Before John Ellis comes up, I want to name the next 5 so that you can be prepared. Arla Thurs, number 6, Jackson Bollinger, number 8, Lee Henderson, number 9, Masahiro Ito, all right, and number 10, William Whitney. So if we could have John Felix.
Yes, I'm John Wilkes. I'm with the Plutonium Trail Caravan. We are a group of community members, volunteers who come together annually to concern ourselves about the safe storage, transport, and disposition of true waste and mixed waste in New Mexico.
Excuse me, John, could you please spell your name out?
Yes, W-I-L-K-S. For 83 years, the occupiers of the Pavillion Plateau have polluted the soil, air, and waters of New Mexico. Now, the New Mexico Environmental Department Secretary has proposed a modification to the 2023 WIP permit, which would require DOE, NNSA's landlord, to complete a phased cleanup of the waste which has accumulated since 1943. The legacy waste is situated on the Llano campus and downslope from the plateau to Native American lands and into the Rio Grande. Gravity is a force that can't be bullied, intimidated, or ignored, unlike previous state administrations. DOE alleges it cannot clean up buried waste in Area C because excavation might interfere with NNSA's activities. DOE declares it cannot clean up buried and above ground waste, even waste stored in 2,555-gallon drums under tents stored in Area G. because it has neither the time, the funds, or the mandate. DOE states it cannot clean up U-235, plutonium, and other true elements present in Acid Canyon and other arroyos because those ultra-hazardous isotopes do not pose a risk to the public's health. We strongly support the Secretary's proposal to modify the WIP permit to protect New Mexico's drinking water and irrigation source, the Rio Grande, which deserves to be protected from lethal chemicals and radionuclides emanating from the Los Alamos nuclear weapons plant, formerly known as the library. Thank you.
As a heads up, we will be going after these next 5 to some folks online. I want to give preference to the people in the room currently because there are about 30 or more signed up. So the next we have is Arla Ertz.
Good evening. My name is Arla S. Ertz, A-R-L-A, middle initial S as in Susan, Ertz, E-R-T-Z. I am a member of WILP, W-I-L-P-F, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. Many who have already commented here and no doubt in other venues have presented you with detailed factual information pertinent to the issue at hand in these hearings. So I need not repeat any of that information, however compelling it may be. Rather, I am here to implore you to reach down inside yourself as you weigh the impact of your decision regarding pig production expansion. As you look into your heart of hearts, realize and know that proceeding with plutonium pig production will not protect or defend our nation, but instead will damage or even destroy it. Pig production will harm the earth, air, water, plants, animals, and
I'm speaking to the environmental impact assessment for what feels like the Death Star, but here we are talking about the production of new plutonium encores and new nuclear weapons and what this will do to our communities. What I want to add to the conversation, coming from Washington State, is that in the eastern part of our state is a place called Hanford, and today at Hanford, and every day at Hanford, workers go in to the Hanford site and risk life and risk disease to clean up the after effects of the first nuclear arms race, the after effects of plutonium production. These people have suffered immense pain and continue to suffer immense pain. What this proposal sets forward is just a repeat of that pain. We are proposing to create new sites like Hanford, new nuclear waste sites, and condemning future generations to this curse that is thousands of years long. We have no way to get rid of nuclear waste. So how do you define the environmental scope of producing nuclear weapons which can end life on Earth? You can't. There is an absurdity to what's happening right now that I think everybody sees. The only path forward that is remotely sane is no action. Do not produce new plutonium hits. Thank you.
I'm with the San Francisco branch of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. I'm a proud Navy family member. I'm an affiliate member of That's for Peace. and I'm a grassroots advocacy team member with Friends Committee on National Legislation. All of these organizations that I volunteer with are opposed to wars and the militarization of our economy with excessive military spending, which includes this expansion of production of plutonium pits to use in missiles, which are in part a failed deterrence strategy. We have no need for production of any plutonium pits. We should be spending our money on social needs. I'm here tonight offering some comments virtually because there was no virtual option available at the Livermore hearings. Also, that hearing was held in Wyoming on the east side of the city instead of the community space available at the lab, which would have been accessible by public transportation. The winery relocation discouraged participation, unfortunately. I also want to request that our comments be included in a report, perhaps in one of the many appendices that will apparently be needed. I'm hearing people speaking over me. This is personal with me. My first experience with an arms race was an evacuation drill. I'm hearing people speaking for me. Somebody else speaking there? Can you still hear me?
We can hear you.
I'm hearing people speak there. Okay, this is personal for me. My first experience with the armed race was an evacuation drill. We did not duck and cover at Pearl Harbor Elementary. We were marched out to waiting gray Navy buses that stopped short of transporting us to a bomb shelter. In Navy House in Monterey, my neighbors who were grad students at the post-grad school disappeared. I later found out it was because of the Cuban Missile Crisis. These experiences led me to work to abolish nuclear weapons with organizations concerned with nuclear disarmament since the 1980s. Let's have more nuclear-free zones. Remember them? I have a few comments on opposition. We'll submit written comments with specific concerns about waste disposal, worker safety, lab security, transportation risks, and community safety. A non-action alternative is not included in part because there is a congressional mandate to produce up to 80 pits per year by 2030. So even a no-action alternative produces new pits. A May 28, 2025 report issued by a Union of Concerned Scientists indicates that we've had enough plutonium pit stockpile and new pits are not needed and are not really going to be used. They're going to use some new weapons that we do not need and cannot afford. The U.S. is a signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. This new pit production is inconsistent with arms reduction under this treaty. Thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight.
Pavillion.
Yes. My name is Pat, P-A-T, last name L-E-A-H-A-N. I'm with the Las Vegas Peace and Justice Center. We're located in Las Vegas, New Mexico, in the northeast part of our beautiful state. First, that shocking quote on the first slide. Peace through atomic strength. Whoa. Grab a dictionary. Peace is defined as freedom from anxiety or distress. Plutonium pit production is anything but freedom from anxiety or distress. That quote is Orwellian. My concern is the devastation on every level if increased pit production is allowed to occur. How sad it is that this hearing, where the public gets to provide input, is only happening because it's a requirement of NEPA. Without NEPA, the integrity is so low at the DOE and NNSA that this hearing would not even be taking place. And yet those are the very agencies we're supposed to trust to act in our best interest. We the people do not believe for 1 minute that these agencies have in mind our well-being or the well-being of our land, water, and air. They already have a proven track record of damaging our world. I'm speaking out in opposition to giving even more leeway to further damage our already struggling planet. I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school my entire life. from first grade to graduate school. As Father Masahiro Ito noted tonight, the Catholic Church has always taught us that the possession of nuclear weapons is wrong. Imagine if someone came into the room right now and held thousands of nukes over our heads and said they're going to deter us from doing something violent, by doing something even more violent, holding these thousands of deadly bombs over our heads. How many of us would just allow that to happen? Threatening the world with extreme nuclear violence, just in case someone might want to someday do something down the road, is an act of insanity. And worse, it's driven by corporate greed. And yet, this is what this draft PEIS and the nuclear weapons industry in general is proposing. Threatening extreme and undoable violence to prevent possible violence. Nuclear deterrence on this extreme scale is wrong. As a Catholic, I cannot abide this. The plan needs to be stopped. Instead, the DOE needs to prioritize legacy waste, and LAMO needs to clean up Area C. A comprehensive cleanup should be DOE's main priority, and it needs to happen now. I will also be submitting more extensive, detailed comments in writing. Thank you.
Amanda Champion. Amanda Champion.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I'm Amanda Champion, AMANDA-CHAMPION. I'm with Concerned Citizens for Nuclear Safety. I live downstream of Lano in Albuquerque. I want to start off by saying that I'm strongly opposed to the program of plutonium pit production. I oppose the fact that the no-action alternative still includes the pursuit of 30 new plutonium pits per year. I oppose all of the alternatives. Where is the true no-action alternative? Why have we never been given this option? There are many reasons I'm opposed to pit production, but for now I want to focus on waste. According to the PEIS, Lano will produce between 169 and 451 metric tons of radioactive waste per year that will be sent off-site for treatment and disposal at WIPP. Lano and WIPP have horrible track records when it comes to hazardous waste management. WIPP was supposed to close in 2024, but due to major backlogs of waste, that has been pushed to 2083. In 2014, WIPP storage failed and an explosion exposed 21 workers. Just this year, NMED fined Lano over $16 million for water quality and permitting violations and for the chromium plume that is contaminating the waters of the Pueblo of San Ildefonso. Legacy waste from the Manhattan Project still litters the plateau, improperly stored in unlined pits, or just left in the soil and water like an acid canyon. Why would we trust DOE to handle new waste properly when they fail to clean up contamination from the last 80 years and when the storage facility in New Mexico is inadequate? This waste must also be transported. The lowest estimation of transportation miles projected per year in the PEIS is 266,500, and the most is 594,000 miles per year. These are miles that cross through our communities, both rural and urban. Accidents happen. Would you want to be living outside, living nearby if something goes wrong on the road? Would you let your kids play outside? The risk of all of these actions and alternatives are too high, especially for a country that has ratified the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. New Mexico deserves healthy air, soil, and water, free from contamination by nuclear weapons production, transport, and testing. The Pajarito Plateau, on which Lano is a guest, is estimated to be between 1 to 2 million years old. The volcano has been growing here for nearly 14 million years. The Ponderosas have been here for over 13,000 years. The Tewa people of this land have been here since time immemorial. Lano is just 83 years old. I like to imagine a time after Lano is gone, when we can look back and see that the time we spent here creating weapons of mass destruction was just a blip. What will this place look like, and what will it feel like? Thank you.
Kaylin May Finnell. Kaylin May Finnell.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Kaylin Fennell, K-A-L-Y-N-F-I-N-N-E-L-L, and I'm with Communities for Clean Water. I'm also here making my public comment as a pregnant woman who calls New Mexico home. The primary concern I want to address with my public comment is that in the draft PEIS, the doses for pregnant women, fetuses, infants, and children are not taken into account. In other words, they're not considered members of the public worth protecting. The PEIS looks at radiological doses of individuals in population within a 50-mile radius of land using the beloved reference land, a 25 to 30-year-old Caucasian male as a standard for population dosage. We know that radiological doses to children and infants multiply that of adults, and that plutonium crosses the placenta. Radioactive and hazardous waste resulting from plutonium production can cause a fetus to experience stunted growth, deformities, abnormal brain function, and an increased risk of childhood cancer later in life. It can also cause miscarriage. This year, LAMO published the Volume 2 Radioactive Air Emission Summary from tritium venting that took place last year. In this summary, LAMO formally acknowledged that estimated radioactive tritium doses to infants are more than 3 times higher than doses to adults. But still, infant doses were not considered during the planning and modeling that took place prior to release, and they will not be taken into account moving forward according to LAMO. I'm asking for a response as to whether LAMO, DOE, and NSA will be willing to take pregnant women, fetuses, infants, and children into account in the final draft of the PEIS. Because the truth is, as a community member, I do not trust you to truly take care with hazardous and nuclear waste streams, especially given the amount of existing radioactive waste at LAMO that remains sitting in drums and unlined pits on a fault line in a wildfire zone. In a letter written by NMED to LAMO on June 9, 2025, NMED Secretary Kenny called out DOE and NNSA for their failure to comply with the New Mexico Hazardous Waste Act for almost 20 years, stating that, quote, the historical gross mismanagement of these waste streams by DOE and NNSA have placed NMED in an untenable situation, end quote. If NMED does not trust LAMO to be stewards of our people, our health, and our environment, then why should we as New Mexicans? Thank you.
We're going to go back now into the room. I'm going to call the next 5 people. John, I'm going to ask this, Tate Fernberger. After that will be Shelley Stevens. After that, Eric Vincent White.
M-E-I-E-R. I'm speaking tonight as a private citizen, as I've retired from the NNSA a number of years ago. But I wanted to provide some comments on the document specific to a couple of the facilities that are mentioned, where I see some potential inconsistencies and further work that needs to be done. Primarily, the first issue I have is is what's shown in one of the earlier slides, a series of project enhancements proposed that are still currently being evaluated. One of those enhancements is something I'm very familiar with. It's to increase the material limit at Brulon from 400 grams to beyond 400 grams plutonium equivalent. When I worked for the NSA, we did a number of studies that looked specifically at what we might do to be able to increase the MAR limit. And the outcome was that very document that was published in 2018, the environmental assessment for Rulon. We did a very careful study of that and determined that it was really infeasible to go beyond 400 grams for 3 separate reasons. Probably in my background as a nuclear safety specialist is the structure systems and components controls that would be required for safety significant or safety class equipment in the facility for which it was not designed. It was designed as a radiological facility. So if you go beyond the 400 grams of plutonium equivalent, you have to, and we looked at things like the structural integrity. So if you need to credit some of those systems as safety significant or safety class, you require potentially expensive modifications to the facility structure, fire protection system, and other systems in the facility, which is infeasible, in my opinion. The other consideration is the nuclear criticality safety limits, where you have to implement a lot more controls in the facility and new programs to address that at over 400 grams. And the third is this security classification, security class 3. We require some additional security controls for the facility for access and control of materials. And that's not an inexpensive option. Back when I worked for Los Alamos, I was the construction project manager for the safeguard and security upgrades at J55, where we did a significant upgrade to the PEIS system. Very expensive, very difficult. We looked at that and determined it was not feasible either. The other point I want to make is in the document, they continue to refer to continuing operations at the CMR building. So the CMR building is an old building. It's acknowledged in the document. It's been around since 1950. My first visit there was 61 years ago when the facility was already 15 years old. And our intent in the NSA, working with the laboratory, this goes back to 2015, was to complete operations of the CMR building by 2019. Which is now 7 years ago. So I was really surprised to see that in the current document. But I think we really need to look at and expend our resources instead of increasing the R limit in RULA to doing everything we can to get out of the CMR building in a timely manner. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Shirley Stevens, S-H-E-R-E-E, Stevens, S-T-E-V-E-N-S. I'm a concerned citizen and grandmother, and I live in Santa Fe. I object to the limitations on the options studied in the PEIS. If NNSA and the Department of Energy were to look at or look for the optimal greenfield site and establish a list of compelling criteria, including safety, logistics, and cost, Los Alamos would be the last place in America they would choose. Why would anyone in their right mind possibly choose such a tectonically active place with limited water, when the pit process and AI require massive amounts of water? The idea of trucking nuclear material in and out of Los Alamos down the frightening New Mexico 502 and the conceivable risk of accidents is certainly not for the faint of heart. Lowell's current water requirements draw down from the same aquifer that provides Santa Fe with a significant portion of its daily water needs. And now you want to pump additional millions of gallons of water every day. To conserve this precious resource, I'm compelled to water trees with rainwater from barrels. I find it grotesque that the government now wants to greedily draw down water from the common aquifer by these volumes. I say no thank you. New Mexico needs to husband our water. Please, tell the authorities that we respect our water and we honor our water. Thank you, and God bless America, all of America.
CENTEWHITE. I'm a Santa Fe local. I am a organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation, PSL, and I'm here today to strongly oppose any plutonium pit production. And I want to ask a question to the audience. Who here would also want absolutely zero pit production in our state? Now, this is a question that this committee, our government, the Department of Energy, all should be asking us, yet this hearing is a farce. It's not meant to take our opinions into consideration. If they were, it's obvious that the sentiment is against plutonium pit production. They give us options for expanded plutonium pit production, the way bully might give you the option of how hard you want to get punched in the face. The way that we are using our resources is ludicrous. We shouldn't be spending money on weapons of mass destruction when we have one of the worst statistics for education in the country. We have so little, we have water scarcity as is, and the landfill expansion will require 1.4 million gallons of water per day for pit production. Our resources could be going to much better places. We could be taking care of people's needs, investing in education, housing, healthcare, but instead we are focused on making more weapons for war. I strongly oppose this. New Mexico strongly opposes this. I'm glad that you're all making your voices heard today.
George Jones. George Jones.
Yes, I am George Jones. GeorgeJones. I'm a full-time resident of Santa Fe. I have graduate degrees in mathematics and computer science from the Ohio State University. Since moving here 16 years ago, I have taken an interest in Lano, as the facility is often in the news. Various mishaps involving tradespeople who become exposed to a high enough dose of radiation that they have to be scrubbed seem all too frequent. Then there was the infamous kitty litter incident. If you don't know about that one, search kitty litter, WIC. That resulted in a chemical explosion at the WIC. Fortunately for Santa Fe and other communities on the transport route, the explosion did not occur above ground. These incidents highlight a lab culture that does not provide the training, discipline, and focus on safety to conduct its operations in a buttoned-down manner. The lab's recent history does not give me confidence they can safely ramp up pit production from about 8 to 12, and they're lucky to do that in a year, to something much higher. Frankly, I am very disappointed in Plano, the place where the first bombs were built, the destination.
Thank you. My name is Dylan Spalding, DYLANSPAULDING, and I'm a senior scientist in the Global Security Program at the Union of Concerned Scientists. I'm also the author of a 2025 report on plutonium pit production, which analyzes the drivers behind the program, as well as the associated risks. The Union of Concerned Scientists opposes new pit production for new nuclear weapons and calls for plutonium emissions at the national labs to be limited to what's required for stockpile surveillance, further studies of plutonium aging, and to maintain the safety of the existing stockpile. Current plans for a sweeping overhaul of the entire U.S. nuclear triad come at a time of unprecedented global tension, are in complete contravention of U.S. obligations under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and in fact decrease rather than bolster U.S. national security. This PEIS amounts to a retroactive rubber stamp of the plan to supercharge U.S. nuclear production, rather than exploring technically feasible alternatives. Importantly, it comes nearly 8 years after significant decisions were made to move ahead with a two-side approach for pit production, rather than preceding federal actions as required by the National Environmental Policy Act. The result is that communities in New Mexico that already bear the so-called cradle-to-grave burdens from nuclear weapons production, from the scars of former uranium mines to the permanent burden of hosting the nation's nuclear waste are left in the dark about the possible added risk that the NNSA assumes they will tolerate. Such risks could be significant for worst-case accidents such as fires at PF4, where the NNSA has resisted installing the most advanced form of active confinement ventilation, or in newly planned waste staging areas. Impacts from tip production at Lano include nearly a doubling of water and power use at the lab, and an unprecedented expansion in infrastructure across culturally sensitive sites. Pit production will dominate the hazardous waste stream from Lano, but the PEIS doesn't address how the lab will balance its obligations to the state to clean up legacy waste and extends the burden on WIP for decades into the future, with no alternative in sight and despite concerns about long-term capacity. Worst, the environmental impacts described in the PEIS may already be out of date. In just the past few months, undoubtedly since this PEIS was drafted, the NNSA has expressed plans to at least double pit production here at Los Alamos to a sustained rate of 60 pits per year, suggesting the agency's ambitions are evolving faster than the analyses that constrain them, and for a program that's not only dangerous but presently unnecessary. This is why a true no-action alternative should be included in the final PEIS, rather than one in which pit production is already built in based on a false sense of urgency. So what about this urgency? The current program to produce new pits is frequently justified by claims that it's necessary to replace aging components and stockpile, including in this PEIS. However, as many speakers have pointed out, new pits are not to life extend existing warheads and to furnish the first all-new warheads planned for production since the end of the Cold War. We do not believe that plutonium aging is a viable motivation for the current plans based on available unclassified literature. Indeed, NNSA's own statements published between 2007 and 2015 concur with third-party assessments that plutonium is aging gracefully, to use their own terminology. The NNSA has also confirmed that some of the new warheads will be fielded with reused pits, potentially from weapons older than those in the current stockpile. The viability of these pits for further deployment would seem to confirm that plutonium aging will not pose a risk to the nuclear arsenal for at least decades to come. New weapons are not an urgent requirement for U.S. nuclear deterrence. Indeed, the program outlined in the PEIS is not being shaped by technical requirements, but rather by policy mandates and political choices that aim to enable a nearly $2 trillion overhaul of the U.S. nuclear arsenal, while potentially inviting a multipolar arms race in response. Thank you very much.
Marco, then followed by Madison Figueroa. So Marco.
Hello. My name is Marco White. We are students at LA, RIG, Space White. I'm a public benefits attorney here in my individual capacity. The potential environmental impact of a nuclear weapon is that somebody uses it. The potential impact of a nuclear weapon is unacceptable environmental devastation. Our commander-in-chief is engaged in a war of aggression in Iran, where they have bragged about bombing nuclear facilities into dust. The continued production of nuclear weapons in New Mexico paints a target on our backs as well. Why would another country not see a country engaged in a war of aggression with nuclear weapons and think to do otherwise? It's unacceptable what we're doing. It's unacceptable that we make nuclear weapons that have the potential to be used at all. The potential is total environmental devastation. That should be first and foremost in any statement about the potential impacts of nuclear weapons. And any statement that doesn't include that is engaged in complete intellectual dishonesty. Finally, our nation is engaged in bad faith when we talk about peace through atomic weapons, about national security through deterrence. We didn't fund SNAP through a government shutdown. We were withholding Medicaid from California based on political rivalries and petty infighting. This nation does not care about the well-being of the people. but it's paying out public benefits that it knows protects safety, livelihoods, and well-being. And yet we're talking about billions and billions of dollars into weapons that make us less safe, that create hazards and danger. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Madison Figueroa, spelled MADISON FIGUEROA. I am currently a student at the University of New Mexico and an officer for Albuquerque Students for Nuclear Disarmament. We are entering a new nuclear arms race that will continue to suck resources out of our state and our communities. This comes at a time when we should be prioritizing disarmament, not increasing weapons and waste. In a state that already falls short in education and public resources, there is no reason that this kind of money should be given to an institution that does nothing but put our people and communities in harm's way. I am deeply concerned about what kind of future is being left for my peers and the generations that come after us. Instead of investing billions of dollars into New Mexico's nuclear weapons industry, we should be investing in bettering our education system, our healthcare, and our opportunities. Since the development of nuclear weapons within the United States, New Mexico has been treated as a sacrifice zone. And this state continues to serve as a dump for the country's nuclear waste. This cannot continue. There cannot be an expansion of plutonium pits in the state. We as New Mexicans cannot ignore the long-term impacts this project will have on our health, our safety, or our environment. My generation deserves a future defined by opportunity and security, not one that increases our chances of nuclear escalation or dependence on the nuclear weapons industry. Thank you.
Hanson, and then we will go to a few folks online. If we can queue up Joel Wurzberg and Pamela Gilchrist.
Good evening. My name is Ann Hanson. I am a former Santa Fe County Commissioner, and you spell my name A-N-N-A, last name Hansen, H-A-N-S-E-N. First thing I want to do is recognize that we are on unceded land that belongs to the Tewa people. The lab is on stolen land. Hexavalent chromium plume is not just chromium, it is hexavalent chromium. Don't let them fool you by using the word chromium. Chromium is not toxic. Hexavalent chromium is toxic. LAM must clean up its legacy waste. MDAC is an unlined pit that they refuse to clean up. As a commissioner, I sat on a technical working group with environmental management, and all they wanted to do was cap and cover Area C. This is not the alternative that we want. We want comprehensive cleanup. We have to stop making pits. We don't need them. We must clean up. The New Mexico Environment Department is demanding the DOE prioritize land's cold war waste for disposal at the waste isolation pilot plant in southern New Mexico instead of new plutonium pit bomb waste. So LAMO sits above the Buckman direct diversion, which is where you all get your water. Our drinking water comes from the Rio Grande, and the environmental management with DOE can't even afford to pay the Buckman direct diversion $96,000 to do cleanup in the Rio Grande. One of the biggest mistakes that DOE had made was separating environmental management out of NNSA.
NFA gets $6 billion and environmental management gets maybe $300 million. That is not enough to do cleanup. It is a shame that NNFA would not hold this hearing without a settlement agreement with New Watch. In 2023, Undersecretary Jill Ruby came here at my invitation, Undersecretary of Department of Energy, and held a town hall. We obviously don't have that kind of access. The other thing I must mention is the Defense Nuclear Facility Safety Board, which is the most important board that represents us. They do not have a quorum. We must have them have a quorum. Mr. Whitehead, you need to talk to your higher-ups and get a quorum for the Defense Nuclear Facility Safety Board. Thank you.
To Joel Worsberg. And then after that, Bobby, but I don't, usually a person has their hand raised. Joel or Pamela, are either of you available to speak? Okay, I'm going to go back into the room then. I'm going to queue up the next 5 names. Catherine Solenshine, Sharon Egenbright, Gary Laswell, Roberto Robaro, and Janet Bowery. So, Berry, Strawberry, okay. So Catherine?
Yes, my name is Kathryn. My last name is Sonenshine. And I want to say I absolutely and totally oppose the production of the plutonium pits anywhere, and especially not in New Mexico. And I agree with and support all of the many details and facts that have already been mentioned here. I had a bunch of those written on this piece of paper, and I really don't feel like I need to totally reiterate those, but you know, we already have over, or at least 15,000 existing pits. I mean, seriously, how many do we need? 80 more each year from wherever, and it doesn't, you know, none of it makes sense. It's like what the popes have told us, and what everyone who's been opposing the nuclear industry and the nuclear weapons creation since decades and decades ago. I met scientists that worked at the Jet Propulsion Lab in the 70s who were creating their own group to say all of this similar information, how they knew it was like, if one bomb's enough to do this, why would we want thousands more bombs? And that was in the 70s with scientists who worked at Jet Propulsion Lab who created a group that went all over parts of California helping to educate people of the insanity. And also some of the early people that worked with the nuclear project that turned against being, wanting to be any part of it, because back in the 50s even, they realized there was not really a focus on the waste. How do you successfully deal with the waste? And it's been a problem always, and it's only more and more of a problem. The things that have already been mentioned earlier, examples, true and real examples. So, yeah, and I was really glad when someone else brought up this statement in the lower left corner here, peace through atomic stream. That is like, it's so bogus, it's ridiculous. It's like, I'm grateful for all the people who addressed that, because I was sitting there looking at that going, oh my God, it's like, you know, what do we really get out of this atomic thing? The environmental destruction of lives, destruction of being able to even consider a healthy future for the future generations. So, I'm grateful for all the many wonderful facts and statements and details that people have been mentioning since before I had this opportunity to walk up here. But I would like to reiterate the importance of the New Mexico Environmental Department, who has so wisely been demanding now that DOE prioritize Landell's moving of this Cold War waste that are I've been told it's 2,500 barrels that are in the tent. I mean, this picture is ridiculous. And we have wildfires, and they've already come very close to that tent. So, I mean, what do we need? Y'all want it to blow up on everyone and destroy all of the property and lives just to be able to prove the point how dangerous that is in anywhere, but particularly in wildfire zone. Okay, thank you.
Should I be concentrating followed by very last well?
Good evening. My name is Sharon Archibald, SharonArgenBright. I've been a resident of Santa Fe County for over 30 years. I'm a mother, a grandmother. 2 of my grandchildren live with me. And I live at the intersection of I-25 and 285, where the whip trucks make a right turn to go south. We are downwinders. I'm not here to talk about my situation. People who live along or frequent the Plutonium Trail need to be aware of the health risks in their environment. The children especially. They're being exposed to toxins at a much younger age for larger portions of their lifetimes. I've been a nurse for almost 50 years. I'm master's prepared nursing in science, retired Air Force nurse, and I'm well aware of what industry and the military in particular has done to my environment. I'm a member of Veterans for Peace. I would like to see the DOE emergency evacuation plan in the EIS. I have asked county emergency response and was pretty much told, we have it. We have this. I talked to an emergency manager who says those trucks will never tip over. If we had a problem, we would call the Department of Transportation and the Department of Energy. To err is human. Never say never. What is your plan of action should we have a spill of plutonium? What would you do immediately? Would you do this immediately, or when you determine that for sure evacuation needs to happen? At what point would you advise people to evacuate? Go as far as possible, as quickly as possible, and remain away for as long as possible. Would it be to evacuate everybody downwind or up to 50 miles out? How should the community prepare if there is a spill of plutonium? We need to know. Should people stay indoors? What is the most you can offer the citizens for protections and precautions? What new provisions will you include in the statement to protect our environment? Forever, like leave it better than when you found it. What are the increased prevention and precautions the DOE will compensate the public for the increased plutonium traffic on their roads in extremely increased amounts? In the little town of Vaughn, New Mexico, out front of the senior center, there's an Allsups on 285. The tankers stop and fill up, 6 at a time for a few minutes. Should we be cautioning the public so they know to stay away from the trucks? Do people going in and out of Allsups know what these trucks are carrying and cautioned against parking near them? Is there anything to do with the emergency management agreement between DOE and the Department of Transportation? And please sign the New Mexico Department of Environment permit modification. I have a poster session if anybody wants to see the trucks, and the one in the middle is particularly hazardous.
At this point, we have more people than can be accommodated. We have more people than can be accommodated by 8 a.m. By 8 p.m., sorry. And we have a list that's, we're not even halfway through yet. So we're willing to go to 8:30. So if you, I know many of you have prepared comments, but if you can minimize them to the degree that you can, it's up to you, but that will allow more people to comment. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gary Lasswell, G-A-R-Y, L-A-S-S-W-E-L-L. I'll try to minimize my comments. I'm a retired environmental consultant, 38 years in environmental compliance, including 12 of those years in radioactive and hazardous waste management. I've worked at many of the major Manhattan project legacy waste sites, including Lano, Hanford, Rocky Flats, Idaho, and Oak Ridge. We've already heard many commenters talk about there is no need for the U.S. to make any new pits to maintain a safe, reliable arsenal for decades to come. And honestly, we have enough nuclear weapons already to wipe out humanity. Why do we need more nuclear weapons? So in my career in the nuclear waste industry, I have seen firsthand the astounding cost of cleanup of legacy radioactive and hazardous waste. It's astonishing that after 80 plus years, we have a huge, tremendous amount of work ahead of us to dispose of legacy waste and to remediate former weapons production sites. I also have been intimately involved in the various processes associated with safe and compliant retrieval, characterization, and shipment of transuranic waste. We know that WIPP is the only repository that is allowed to accept transuranic waste, and it was supposed to originally close around 2024. It's going to be needed for much longer than that. We've got a 10-year permit renewal in 2023. But WIPP's projected capacity remains contentious, as does the question of how to prioritize legacy waste versus newly produced waste if the pit production goes forward, which illustrates the multifaceted uncertainties in the U.S. strategy for managing nuclear waste over the long term. The true environmental cost of nuclear weapons production is virtually insurmountable, given the long-lived nature of the radionuclides, and what is left behind in the near impossibility of achieving complete environmental restoration. It just won't happen. So, I strongly encourage the NNSA and DOE to consider an option where no new pits are produced, and that policy should prioritize stewardship of the present stockpile and alternatives such as reusing certified pits to extend the present warhead stockpile. Thank you.
Next, we have Roberto Global, after that, Janet Berry, and then John Worf Snyder will be after that. Roberto?
Buenas, mi nombre es Roberto Global. Yo estoy pensando que tenemos problemas con las producciones de...
Excuse me, could you spell your first and last name?
Roberto Roibal, R-O-B-E-R-T-O, R-O-I-B-A-L. May I ask who your translator is? There's no translator here. We keep bringing this issue up. NNSA and DOE keep putting out materials, and they rarely put them out in Spanish, and they never ever put out materials in Tewa, Dene, or other New Mexico indigenous languages. That's a shameful thing to be doing. I was born and raised here in Santa Fe, Growing up, our family used to go camping and fishing in the Jemez Mountains. We fished on the Rio Grande River, and we fished at Cochiti Lake, which now all have radioactive contamination. I remember being in elementary school at Guadalupe School here, as 3rd, 4th, 5th graders, they would have atomic bomb drills. They would ring the bell, and we would all have to jump under the desk. You know, we were 9, 10 years old, and we would just all laugh at each other. We knew if there was an atomic bomb explosion, and we used to tell each other we could just kiss our little asses goodbye. Now we are learning that chromium has been detected in some in the Fonso Pueblo. What does the NSA and DOE plan to do about that? My biggest fear is that the chromium and other nuclear materials will seep into our groundwater, which will affect Santa Fe and many other communities in this area. It looks like our federal government has deemed New Mexico to be a nuclear sacrifice zone. Uranium was first mined on indigenous lands west of Albuquerque, and as a result, many indigenous people have died from cancer. The first atomic bomb was developed at Llano. On July 16, 1945, our government bombed New Mexico first at Trinity Site in New Mexico, and as a result, many people in the surrounding areas have died from cancer. The Congress passed the RECA, the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. They offered RECA to people in Nevada, Utah, and other states where people were contaminated. The Tularosa Basin downwinders near Trinity Site had to fight for 75 years to finally get it now. What a shame. New Mexico has the largest nuclear waste repository in the United States at the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant. Our water and land is being contaminated by nuclear materials. Transportation of nuclear waste has been a huge concern, and currently there are totally insufficient plans for emergency responses in the event of accidents with trucks carrying nuclear waste on our roadways. A huge concern to me is the possibility of wildfires around Los Alamos. What happens if those fires reach Llano? We'll see nuclear materials in our air that could contaminate all New Mexico and surrounding states. Our country doesn't need more pits for nuclear missiles to kill hundreds of thousands of people around the world. I see this, as people mentioned that slogan on the slide, peace through atomic strength. If we were to have a nuclear war, it would only take 100 nuclear bomb explosions to destroy life on Earth as we know it today. But then I guess it'd be a peaceful Earth. Shut down pit production at Llano for humanity's sake now. Thank you.
Good evening. Janet Berry, Janetberry. The legacy of death lives on. I'm going to cry. Family members of the downwinders in Tularosa continue to become ill and die from the Trinity site, deadly radioactive fallout, though they're finally now being compensated, but it's too late for a lot of the children and family that have died from cancer. We're at war again over who can have weapons of mass destruction. Who made the United States in charge of that? Who are we to say, you can have them, we can have them, you can't have them, so instead we're going to just blow your asses up and your families and your children. Other countries fear us too because we've become huge bullies. We are bullies now, and we're a horrible country. I'm sorry to say it, I'm embarrassed. My parents were World War II veterans. Other relatives were veterans, and I'm embarrassed of what we've become. The buildings at the lab are crumbling, and the people working there are in jeopardy. And I've known people and still know people who work at the lab. I met a couple at a party years ago. They were both dying. They worked at the lab, and they knew they were dying from working there, but the lab was going to pay for everything until they were on their deathbeds. I believe those people are gone because that party was a long time ago, and they were elderly. The lab has contaminated Mother Earth, Pueblo lands for years. It needs to be held accountable. I work in the Santa Fe public schools with homeless students and their families. There are children in Santa Fe and around our country and the world who are hungry have no place to live and therefore are put in danger, not to mention the possibility of a grim future. Making more bombs in anticipation of a threat from other countries will not save us, will not feed our children, will not support our families, will not make this country great. It's going to eat us alive. What a horrific waste of lives and money. It's shameful. Thank you.
Bomb jumps out of the plane, he's waving his cowboy hat as the bomb is headed for the ground. It's as funny and as tragic as that. So, this is a grave production. Pit production, grave. Graves are on the horizon, many more graves. And it's war is peace, death is life, poison is delicious, killing is creative, peace through atomic death. So this is a parody we're living in. We need to see into that and through that, and I'm hoping that comes through tonight and will stay with us. Thank you.
Aaron Chiodo, followed by Mira Gomez, and shortly we'll go back to online. Aaron, and then Mira Gomez following.
I think that's me. My name is Aria Chiodo, ARIACHIODO. I was given this, and I do agree with it. Santa Fe is not a nuclear weapons suburb, but I also want to acknowledge that much of the past and current greatest impacts from nuclear production, testing, and waste severely has impacted other parts of the state, indigenous, natural landscapes and water, and farms and agriculture. New Mexicans have suffered enough from this nuclear testing, and the so-called downwinders have only just been compensated to not enough of a degree. So the federal government should really be focusing on those who have already been affected. The U.S. needs less weapons, not more. This lie that we should spend all our money and resources on weapons and war instead of the people and the environment is not being tolerated any longer. Given the climate crisis, we need to be moving towards sustainability, investing in solar and wind, not nuclear, reducing our use of water and resources. Plutonium pits and nuclear production have terrible, irreparable impacts on our environment and resources, and we use a huge amount of water. The NNSA really should be focusing on the current weapons waste, as has been said before, and fallout from past experiments, and not adding new production. Thank you.
All right, Miria Gomez, and then we're going to go back online to Joel Weisberg and Pamela Gilchrist.
Buenas tardes, desde Dios. Mi nombre es Miraya Gómez. M-Y-R-I-A-H-G-O-M-E-Z.
Excuse me, would you please spell your first and last name?
Y no voy a traducir mis comentarios. Estoy aquí esta noche por mi propia voluntad como miembro del público. Crecí a 15 minutos de Los Álamos en el pueblo del rancho del Valle de Coaque. Los miembros de mi familia han estado trabajando en la meseta de Pajarito desde antes del inicio del proyecto Manhattan. Este proyecto nuevo promociona la creación de trabajos nuevos y el laboratorio de Los Álamos ya está contratando a aproximadamente 1,000 personas, pero estas con principalmente trabajos que reclutarán trabajadores de fuera, estresando aún más el mercado inmobiliario local y aumentados los precios para los lugareños que ya no pueden permitirse vivir en nuestros valles, porque la economía del laboratorio ha valorado a los empleados no del laboratorio que no pueden permitirse vivir estilos de la vida tradicionales basados en la tierra. La prisa por completar este proyecto en un plazo apresado ponerá a los trabajadores en riesgo. La instalación de plutonio tiene un historial de violaciones de seguridad recientes, exposición de los trabajadores al plutonio y más. La normalización del complejo industrial de armas nucleares, particularmente en Nuevo México, ha creado una dependencia de dinero federal para que la mayoría de los mexicanos nunca cuestionen los cambios en los procesos, incluido el aumento radical de la producción de los núcleos de plutonio. La naturaleza desafortunada de la situación es que la producción de núcleos de plutonio resulta en una alteración total de todo el complejo, más allá de lo que va a ocurrir aquí en Nuevo México. Casi todo en el laboratorio de Los Álamos, y van a pasar efectos por todo nuestro estado, incluido la minería de uranio. En las 2 semanas pasadas, los gobiernos locales aquí en Nuevo México han pasado leyes iniciando la minería de uranio. La declaración de impacto ambiental necesita incluir una verdadera alternativa sin acción que elimine por completo el aumento de la producción del plan para los próximos 50 años. Casi todas las personas que están aquí ahora no van a estar aquí en 50 años. Nos vamos a dejar tantos problemas para la próxima generación. Una persona cercana a mí fue diagnosticada con mieloma múltiple esta semana. Alguien que vivió en el Valle de Powahki durante más de 40 años, su historia no es única. Este proyecto no es necesario, no es justo. Sí. Si los Estados Unidos afirman estar trabajando hacia la eliminación total de las armas nucleares, como se indica en la revisión de la postura nuclear, entonces pon atención para limpiar todo que ya están aquí. Gracias.
And then also Pamela Gilchrist, but then we're going to come back into the room. Nadia Baldo, and then Alicia Gallegos will be the next 2 in the room. So Joel Weisberg, he dropped off. Okay, is Pamela Gilchrist?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Is that Pamela Gilchrist?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Pamela Gilchrist, PAMELGILCHRST. I get feedback. Is there any way I can mute that?
You can turn down your speaker.
Well, let me just try and ignore it. I'm a resident of Santa Fe, associate member of Veterans for Peace. The immoral plan to expand plutonium pit production is dangerous and a multi-billion-dollar mistake. New ground floors are not needed for the existing system. Plutonium pit production diverts critical funds from genuine community needs. It increases severe environmental and public health risks and threatens to trigger a destabilizing global arms race. This immoral plan is technically unnecessary. Independent scientific assessment, including studies by the Lawrence Livermore National Lab, have confirmed that existing legacy pits have an operational lifespan of well over 100 years, with an average age of roughly 40. Our current pit remains viable for decades. Furthermore, the U.S. has thousands of 15,000 surplus pits stored in a plant in Texas. New pit production is not for maintenance. It is sold to build entirely new, unneeded, destabilizing nuclear warheads. This immoral plan has staggering costs and mismanagement. The National Security Administration's expansion plan is projected to cost billions and billions, $30 to $60 billion over the next 2 decades. Diverting these vast public funds, our tax dollars, away from education, healthcare, and climate resilience, weakens rather than strengthens a real national security. This immoral plan has environmental and public health hazards. Expanding tip production forces both Los Alamos National Lab and the Savannah River site to take on major radiological risks with catastrophic accidents. Concern amplified by historical safety and environmental issues at both facilities. Our New Mexico Environment Department has rightly demanded that DOE prioritize manifold for wastes for disposal at the waste isolation power plant, not the waste from plutonium productions.
Excuse me, Ms. Gilchrist, we need you to wrap up your comments, please.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Back into the room, we have Nayan Valdo, followed by Alicia Gallegos, and I apologize if I'm not saying your names properly.
Hello, my name is Naya Valdo, Nayavaldо, and I oppose any and all plutonium pit production. I'm a tribal member of the Pueblo of Acoma and a concerned citizen about the development of nuclear weapons happening in northern Pueblo territory that is directly connected to an increase of proposed uranium mines in my own community. Mi nombre es Naya Valdo y estoy en el puesto del desarrollo de los núcleos de plutonio. Soy un miembro del pueblo de Acoma y estoy preocupada por el desarrollo de las armas nucleares que está ocurriendo en los territorios pueblos en el norte y que está conectada con la minería de uranio en mi comunidad. I'm also a birth worker, and I'm concerned about the intergenerational effects of radiation exposure, where industrial chemicals are dumped into the waters and soil and then move up through the food chain, through plants, fish, wildlife, and eventually to us. Radioactive contaminants are then stored in our bodies and are only disposed of when they transfer to the newborn by crossing the placenta or in breast milk. Each succeeding generation is inheriting a burden of toxic contaminants from their mothers. We have to protect the most vulnerable in our communities and say no to the expansion or continuation of any part of the nuclear fuel chain. Tenemos que proteger a los miembros de nuestra comunidad que son más vulnerables a lo que está pasando y decir no a la continuación de ningún parte del ciclo nuclear. Thank you.
And we will follow that with Rocco Zingo.
What's the hope? Excuse me. My name is Alicia Gallegos, ALICIAGALLEGOS. I am from the Pueblo of Acoma and the Pueblo of Laguna, affiliated with the village of Puari. New plutonium pit production will cost billions in US tax dollars. These are tax dollars that could go towards cleanup and other social programs that New Mexico needs. as we are the last in all of the bad things and first in all the worst. Plutonium pit production will also have significant impacts on water and the availability of water for our future generations, for things like agriculture and ceremonial usages. The amount of pit production proposed would put the workforce and surrounding communities at extreme risk due to the lack of oversight and inherent transparency issues of the nuclear weapons complex. New warheads for new bombs means more generations forced to endure the uncertainty of a world with nuclear weapons and the constant threat of nuclear war. Funding for the U.S. nuclear programs should be used for safe disarmament, environmental cleanup, and so children, families, students, elders, and workers can live a long and healthy life. We do not want nuclear weapons made on our homelands. We want a livable future, a nuclear-free future. When there's a huge problem at hand here with the waste, we cannot look forward for new pit production or even nuclear energy until you all can address that problem and put funds towards research on how to safely dispose of the mess you created on our homelands. My community would be at the forefront of this pit production with uranium mining, as we have high-grade uranium ore deposits along the Grants Mineral Belt where Laguna and Acoma are located. Indigenous people experience cumulative impacts due to institutional racism. We live interconnectedly with the natural world, which exposes us to radiation at rates way higher than what is studied because it's based off of white bodies and a white male. We need reproductive justice for our communities here in New Mexico, impacted by the first atomic bomb that was set off in 1946, was it? 45, thank you. So we cannot have plutonium pit production continue. You need to cease that at all costs. We do not need more weapons. And Lano should just shut down forever, so please put that on your 5-year plan. And I'd like to encourage everybody to submit written comments that are due July 16th. Tawae.
And then after local, we are going to go back online to Lady Ford and Sue Schuer.
Hello, my name is Rocco Zinger. That's ROCCOZINGER. I am part of the Fire on the Mountain group, and we oppose any new nuclear waste until the legacy waste is taken care of. Before the Department of Energy creates more nuclear waste in New Mexico, it must first deal with the dangerous legacy waste that already threatens our communities. At Area G, as in Los Alamos Laboratory, approximately 2,500 55-gallon drums of legacy radioactive waste remain stored above ground and exposed to increasingly severe wildfire environment. Northern New Mexico is no longer a place where a catastrophic wildfire is a remote possibility. As we all know, it is a recurring reality. We have already seen this danger again and again. The Dome Fire in 1996 rapidly spread through the MS Mountains and threatened Los Alamos National Laboratory. The Cerro Grande Fire in 2000 burned across Los Alamos National Laboratory property, destroying hundreds of homes, forcing the evacuation of thousands of residents, and released contaminants into the air from burned laboratory lands. Also, Los Conchas Fire, 2011, again threatened Lano and forced another evacuation of Los Alamos. That is not speculation, this is history. Climate change, drought, beetle-killed forests, and extreme winds are making wildfires larger, faster, and more unpredictable every year. The Department of Energy cannot continue acting as though these risks are theoretical while radioactive waste sits vulnerable on the forested mesa above northern New Mexico communities. If plutonium-bearing waste were dispersed in major wildfire,
The consequences would be devastating and potentially irreversible. According to studies associated with Sandia and other federal research institutions, airborne plutonium contamination is extraordinarily difficult, if not impossible, to fully remediate once widely dispersed into soil, homes, watersheds, and forests. A major radiological release would threaten Santa Fe, Los Alamos, Espanola, Pueblo communities, and the watersheds, agriculture. Families would not only lose their homes, but their ability to insure, sell, or safely live on their land for generations. Instead of treating this legacy waste as the urgent priority, DOE is moving aggressively toward expanding plutonium production. That's backwards. The Fire on the Mountain Group strongly supports the permit modifications proposed by New Mexico Environment Department because they finally establish accountability. Thank you.
All right, we're going to go online. Lee Ford online, followed by Sue Schumer online. Lee,
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Lee Ford. It's Leigh Ford, and I work for the Snake River Alliance based in Boynton in Idaho. First, I want to thank Canoe Watch New Mexico for making this possible. And I also wanted to correct something slightly that was said in the introductory presentation. Rocky Flats didn't just end. It was busted by the FBI and shut down. I put that waste in Idaho, where workers have been working hard to clean it up, repackage it, and then send it on to WIT in New Mexico. So Idaho is my home state, but this is going to affect us all. The bomb making affects us all. From production to mining to use. So use has also affected a lot of our members and my family. And until recently, I didn't realize that watching my grandmother die when she was 58, I was just a little kid, that it was actually my country that did that to her. The whole attitude, waiting for the winds to blow north so that it would not affect certain populations and affect others, because we're quote unquote low use, that attitude still exists today. This new pit production is just going to probably lead to more testing. Even disturbing the ground in Nevada is dangerous. And I mentioned the attitude still exists today because there was a Republica article just a couple months ago that exposed a meeting at Idaho National Lab that a DOGE employee said that when the topic of nuclear test sites and radiation exposure came up, he said, well, they only tested around Utah. There's only like 70 people there. And another INL person said, staff said, there's a lot of babies there. And another staffer just joked, well, they've been down here before. So the attitude still exists, and I do not trust more pit production and then potential use, because testing is use. It's an aggressive ramp up to a nuclear arms race, and the need is non-existent. We have plenty of pits, and studies have shown that the pits we have can last for at least 100 years minimum. So I do not agree with the false choice that no matter if we comment, we still have to deal with 30 pits a year or whatever the number was, but no more pits need to be produced. Thank you.
All right, and next we have Sue Schumer online. Sue, are you there? No? Okay. She's trying to unmute. Go ahead now. Sue?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. My name is Susan Skirman, S-U-S-A-N, S-C-H-U-U-R-M-A-N. I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I'm a member of a grassroots activist organization called Demand Nuclear Abolition. New Mexico does not consent to expanded plutonium pit production. It's irresponsible for NNSA to produce more plutonium pits when the nuclear waste from previous nuclear bomb production has not been cleaned up. When you find yourself in a hole, the worst thing you can do is dig the hole deeper. This applies to Los Alamos National Lab as well as Savannah Riverside. Dictatorships shove harmful national security projects onto communities without their consent. Democracy should not. Past and current generations of New Mexicans have paid the price with their health for being designated without their consent to be sacrificed zones. Future generations should not be sacrificed as well. We must change how we define what true national security means. Stop creating nuclear bombs and nuclear waste. That is the real threat to national security. And I echo what the previous speaker said about the need to take into account that pregnant women have triple the exposure to radiation. If you are truly pro-life, then protect the most vulnerable. Then everyone will be protected. Thank you.
I'm going to slaughter this name. A-R-O, Mel Delono? Does that sound familiar? Anyone in the room? This is in the room? Is that person here? Is that person Aro Maldonado? Okay, if they turn up, we can come back to them. Greg Mello, and then after Greg, there will be Pilar Anello. Greg?
Greg Mello, I'm the director of the Los Alamos City Group in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Spell your name, please.
Gregmello. We'll post these comments and in due time written comments that may be submitted later. Please write me if you have any questions. I want to remind people that there are 3 NNSA offices devoted to nuclear weapons and pit production here in Santa Fe. So nearly all of Los Alamos' work is nuclear weapons, and about a third or more of that work is pit production, and office work and so forth related to pit production is here in Santa Fe. There is a contemplated larger satellite campus, which the last year's National Defense Authorization Act required a report concerning. Senator Heinrich recently bragged about it. So the idea is to move as many missions offices from Los Alamos off the hill to deal with the transportation problem. Santa Fe is a prime location for this campus. We have been fighting it now for some years. So far successfully, but people shouldn't think of Los Alamos as up there. The lab is right here in this town, and thousands of people work at Los Alamos Laboratory who live in this town. This is very much a part of Los Alamos Lab here. Now, we all don't want pit production, but that and $4 or $5 will get you a cup of coffee. NNSA is not listening to what is said here in this room. So it's all very good for us to be saying this, and there's a degree of mutual support and education involved. But it's not enough. Anna Hansen remarked that she got Jill Ruby to come. Where's Jill Ruby's successor, Brandon Williams? Where's Ted White? They are not listening. This is, the NNSA did not put out a press release for this meeting. So I have worked now for 30 years on pit production and related issues. I've written many reports, technical reports on pit production, pit reuse, policy related to pit production, that have met several hundred times with committee staff, GIO, NFSB, and others in Washington. And I can tell you that the cries for no pit production anywhere, and in addition, no preparations for pit production, no pit production capability, are falling on deaf ears. That's not That's not what's going to happen. Congress and the NNSA are going to have a pit production capability. And what we here in New Mexico must decide is how much we don't want that to happen right here. The politics are complicated because it is because of our delegation and the Democrats in Congress that this mission is here at Los Alamos. We cannot trust the progressive community to be on our side, the arms control community to be on our side and do the obvious thing. They want pit production here because very reasonably they don't want to give it to Lindsey Graham.
Excuse me, Mr. Mello, you need to.
Thank you very much. I will wrap up now. Join us if you can. Talk to us. We have ongoing programs and we'd love to have you involved. Some may have stipends and it's going to take more than this meeting in order to really make a difference. Thank you very much.
The next two people are in the room, and then we'll go back online. There's Pilar Amigo, Elizabeth Homart, and Tom Rubin.
Hi, my name is Pilar Anjo, Pilarannll. I'm a family nurse practitioner that's worked in this community for over 30 years. I am concerned about the health and safety of LANO workers, the surrounding communities, the environment, air, water, and soil, especially with the ramped up rapid expansion of new plutonium pit production goals, ostensibly for national security. Why is this necessary and why is it being forced on us? This is similar to a related issue of the rapid expansion of data centers being forced on vulnerable communities without consent, assuming that this is necessary and a foregone conclusion. Your report indicates that there will not be significant risks of exposure to increase the risk of cancers or other illnesses, but LAML has a history of covering up exposures, accidents, injuries, and illnesses, as well as having employees take a vow of silence, having to keep their work a secret. The Cerro Gordo fire in May 2000 engulfed nuclear materials stored at the lab. Workers and firefighters were not monitored for exposure. Leaving the hospital that evening, I could see on the Pajarito Plateau the huge fire. The next day, there were ashes falling from the sky in Santa Fe. I was pregnant at the time. As people have already mentioned, Alicia mentioned, the government does not consider infants and children as persons and sets the standard for measures of radiological doses based on what they call a standard man, Euro-American 5'7" and 183 pounds. The draft does not address worst-case scenarios such as a catastrophic fire, which are becoming more frequent. The impact radius must be expanded beyond 50 miles to accurately account for worst-case scenarios. I have seen firsthand the devastating health effects on LAML workers of all capacities and their families, and provided care and support for them as they suffered, became debilitated, and died slowly from various cancers and neurodegenerative disorders. For decades, LAML has been criticized for sacrificing the health and safety of its workers for atomic progress. I pray that you will stop pit production at LAML and focus, as everybody has mentioned, on cleanup of legacy waste and the impacted community's health and safety needs. Can I just say one more thing? Iran and Russia are not our biggest national security threat. The U.S. expansion of nuclear weapons and the illegal secretive possession by Israel of nuclear weapons are our biggest threat to humanity.
All right, we're gonna go online, Patrick Bosold, and after that, Leah online, Yananton, Leah Yananton online, first of all, Patrick Bosold.
Oh, so yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, go ahead.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. I am a U.S. Army veteran, member of Veterans for Peace, and I served in the height of the Cold War in Europe, early 70s. And it was at that time that I spent a lot of time around people who just took for granted that there would be a World War III and it would be fought with nuclear weapons. Ever since then, I have been very much dedicated to seeing that that does not happen. You're not giving America peace through atomic strength by producing more plutonium pits for bigger, badder, brand new bombs. The first thing I want to address, because it's so ubiquitous, is the problem of the waste. 24,600 year half-life for plutonium. Nobody has figured out what to do with that kind of waste. And the New Mexico Environmental Department has made it clear that their territory is having trouble handling the stuff from World War II. If you do a proper environmental impact statement, the only conclusion you can draw is don't create any more of this stuff and clean up the stuff you've already made. Regarding something that's been mentioned once or twice, an environmental impact statement is not complete if you do not include what happens if these get used. If a handful of these got used anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere, it would create a situation in which, to quote folks back from the 1960s, the living will envy the dead. That is not security, that is not peace through atomic strength, it's a disaster waiting to happen. Creating more plutonium pits is not going to make that situation any better. I particularly object to the notion that a no-action alternative still means that plutonium pits are produced. It's ludicrous. The no-action alternative says take no further action. And I urge NNSA and the DOE to put that in this PEIS as an alternative. One other point that's been made here, the United States is a member of the United Nations. The United Nations has on the books, verified and enforced, the United Nations Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. It's in force. This country is out of compliance with its membership in the UN by not signing on to and ratifying that treaty. That includes the cessation of all of these kinds of activities permanently, and I support every single person who has said, we need to clean up the mess we've made. Thank you.
All right, we have online, is there a Leah Yananton? Leah? Can you hear us? Can you speak? Okay, online, Jean Nichols.
Oh, I just unmuted my mic.
Leah?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Leah Yannanton, Leahanyanton. I strongly oppose new pit production overall, and there should be no new nuclear material at Los Alamos. Yes, and I think the environmental impact statement needs to be expanded to include the cumulative impact, the pollution burden from the destruction of rivers, colonizing of territory, and the expansion of infrastructure. with radioactive and heavy metal contaminants, through which the future has been squandered, that needs to be acknowledged. And how do you quantify the theft of our collective future with short-term profits? Yeah, as I heard, you don't. Something that really frightens me, a headline that was in the news this week, I want to point out, is that the Pentagon revealed the location of a U.S. Navy nuclear-armed submarine in a rare move a day after President Trump rejected the latest peace proposal from Iran. The Ohio-class ballistic missile submarine arrived in Gibraltar, a British territory on Spain's south coast, on Sunday. The U.S. Sixth Fleet said, and it said that the ballistic missile, the Ohio-class ballistic missile submarines are undetectable launch platforms for submarine-launched ballistic missiles, providing the U.S. with its most survivable leg of the nuclear triad. The Pentagon did not disclose the name of the submarine, one of the U.S. military's most secretive weapons. And in general, the locations of U.S. nuclear-armed submarines are highly classified. Trump told reporters Monday the U.S. ceasefire with Iran is on life support, and it was, he rejected it. So now he's flexing the nuclear submarines. This reminds me, you know, of the 160 school children that were killed in Iran. My father-in-law was in Nagasaki. He was sent there. He was in the army. He was sent to Nagasaki a few months after the bomb drop, and he was near the hypocenter, and he photographed the site of where the Shiroyama Elementary School was, where 1,400 school children were killed instantly. So where is the accountability? Where are these statistics in the environmental statement for long-term impacts on humanity, on our mental health, on our generational health? Nagasaki was the site of the largest Christian population in Japan, and the Urakami Cathedral was destroyed. 8,500 people out of a congregation of 12,000 were killed that morning. And the U.S. government needs to regulate the war industry. I know that we need to make a lot more noise about them.
Jean, we need you to conclude your comments, please.
Okay, yes, we can use resources to feed children, to clean up, and put this nightmare to bed. Thank you.
Last person online that we'll be able to take is Jean Nichols. Jean Nichols, are you there? Jean Nichols? No? Okay, we're not sure. If you want to raise your hand to the moderator, and then we can come back to you. Do we have a Tabitha Harnika in the room? Tabitha Harnika, and then Abel Katten. I can't read the last part of it. Tabitha? Okay, we'll come back to you, Jean.
Good evening, buenas tardes. My name is Tabitha Harinik, Tabitha. I'm here today as a New Mexican, born and raised in Albuquerque, and also as a social anthropologist, currently studying lived experiences of nuclear harm across New Mexico communities. The impacts on our health, our environments, our livelihoods, our relationships, our cultures, and our spiritual lives, and what meaningful acknowledgement, justice, and reparation looks like to communities that have long been ignored, dismissed, and continue to be left unwillingly exposed to nuclear risks from both past and ongoing activities. I'm here because the communities I work with have been waiting for decades for accountability for harm already done. This is not abstract. I have sat with families in which nearly every grandparent, parent, aunt, uncle, sibling, cousin, and even some children have experienced cancer or serious illness, very possibly linked to these legacies. And only some of them have been eligible for even the limited acknowledgement and compensation that exists. The US government has harmed its own people. That harm has not been meaningfully repaired, and yet here we are discussing expanded pit production and yet new risks associated with it before existing harms have been meaningfully acknowledged, let alone repaired. Pit production will compound injustice and environmental racism already existing in New Mexico, which disproportionately impacts Hispanic and Native communities. To be clear, my opposition is not simply to where this production happens. It is to the production itself, to a new nuclear arms race that no community anywhere should be asked to bear the consequences of. This project is ultimately in service to power, to domination, and to the creation of a profound risk of local and global catastrophe, rather than anything pro-social, pro-human, pro-earth, or pro-future. Pit production will bind generations with no voice tonight. Children not yet born will inherit contaminated land and water that remains hazardous for tens of thousands of years, and in a state already among the least resourced in the country for healthcare. That intergenerational burden demands a standard of caution that this program does not meet. I intend to submit fuller written comments on the specific content of the PEIS before July 16th, which curiously is the anniversary of the Trinity detonation and the church rock spill, which have so significantly harmed New Mexicans. But I came tonight to say that this process must reckon with what has already been done, as many have said, not only with what might happen next. As a New Mexican who cares deeply about this land and its peoples, and a scholar of the legacy of nuclear harm, I strongly oppose the NNSA's pit production program and the new nuclear arms race that it is accelerating. Thank you. Gracias.
Okay, you'll be the last one then in the room after this person. Thank you. Go ahead, Jean.
Okay, thank you. Jean Nichols, Jeannichols. There are numerous environmental factors that make pit production at Llano totally unacceptable. Llano is an old facility on limited stolen real estate that has a history of safety problems and accidents. Access roads are winding and dangerous. The Pavillion Plateau is on a seismic zone over a fault line. Wildfires have come perilously close to the waste sitting in tents. After the Cerro Grande fire, when ash rained down on our communities, studies showed radioactive contaminants in our soils, our dust, our fruit 40 miles downwind. Chromium contamination has now reached San Ildefonso Pueblo and threatens groundwater. We are a dry state with projections of a 25% shortfall over the next decades. New Mexico agriculture uses 2.9 million acre-feet of water per year, and Llano wants nearly half of that, 1.4 million per day. Plans to relax safety standards are putting us more at risk. Add to this that new pits are totally unnecessary and have nothing to do with shoring up our stockpile for deterrence. There are 15,000 pits at Pantex that are still usable. New pit production is all for new weapons, many times more powerful than the ones dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Nuclear weapons are illegal internationally and immoral under any religious or civil criteria. Really, this PEIS should also address the environmental effects should one ever be used by accident or design. This whole pit production at Llano was political force, pushed by our democratic establishment. It is a clear case of environmental racism, centered in New Mexico, a state with large Native and Hispanic populations, and a history of using workers and citizens as guinea pigs to test the effects of radiation. This is amplified by the fact that you haven't even provided translation services for this hearing. New Mexico has the only current nuclear waste storage facility that was meant as a pilot project, not as the only repository for all of nation's waste. The legacy waste sitting in a fire zone in Los Alamos is mandated to have priority for storage or WIP. But as we all know, when new waste is produced, priorities will shift. New Mexico has done its part for national security, and in truth, weapons of mass destruction do not provide security, quite the opposite. What would provide security would be to spend the projected $2 trillion it will cost over several decades on infrastructure, education, teacher salaries, homelessness, affordable housing, renewable energy sources, and healthcare. At the very least, if this PIT project is pushed forward through, despite our words and common sense. The DOE should pay the health insurance of all workers and downwind New Mexico's, and should establish.
Jean, we need you to conclude your comments, please.
And they should establish a government-run emergency response center in case of nuclear accidents. This should not fall on the backs of our volunteer EMS and fire departments. Thank you very much.
I'm not going to try to say your name again.
Hi everyone, my name is Aleli Kate Garcia, that's spelled ALHELICATON-Garcia. And as a young person living here in New Mexico, I have the most to lose and potentially the most to gain with a project like this. There is so much federal money that is going towards the production of these weapons while New Mexico is fourth in child hunger. And that doesn't seem right to me. As a farmer and a student of ethics, I really do believe, and I really say this with so much hope, that you will listen to the people in this room tonight and not simply consider us. And that will conclude my statement, as I'd like to see the rest of my time to Ms. Leona Morgan, a Dene community member.
Thank you, Aleli. My name is Leona Morgan, Leonamorgan. I'm a member of several community groups addressing various parts of the uranium fuel chain here, nationally, and internationally. I am also a commissioner on the Navajo Nation Dene Uranium Remediation Advisory Commission, but tonight these comments are my own as an individual, a resident of New Mexico, and an indigenous woman from Dene-Pikeya, whose ancestors have survived several waves of colonization, now surviving ongoing nuclear colonialism. I oppose all proposed activities related to new nuclear weapons production, starting with new uranium extraction and enrichment, and the use of uranium in nuclear reactors to make plutonium, the plutonium pit production, and all production of other components. I oppose the creation, testing, and use of nuclear weapons. And I just want to say, despite what DOE says, we do not have adequate waste storage capacity for all the types of waste that exist. Let's look at the abandoned uranium mines from weapons production. There's over 20,000 in the country, and the DOE only claims a fraction of those. We need to clean up all of the waste before making new waste. We need to spend the trillions of dollars on new weapons for cleanup. We need money for RECA, healthcare, cancer centers on our reservations, and all impacted communities. Lastly, proper tribal consultation must be more than a letter sent to our indigenous nations. DOE must attend and present in person to impacted indigenous nations with open and respectful dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you all for your participation and comments. I really appreciate that you've been a very respectful crowd and group of people. Thank you very much, and for welcoming those of us that are from outside the area as well. Written comments may continue to be submitted until midnight on July 16. Submission by email is preferred. Comments may also be submitted by postal mail. Anyone who is unable to provide oral comments tonight, we know there are many of you, may submit written comments to PEIS@nmsa.tv.gov, providing us